You had the whole thing ready before the meeting started. Every objection had a counter, every number had a source. The one person who pushes back on everything had nothing left to grab because you had already argued their side for them. That is not preparation. If you have done it long enough, you have stopped noticing the pattern. It just feels like being thorough. I want to tell you about a call where I did this in full view of everyone, including myself. It was a call with executive leadership. The agenda was a new strategy, something that would save the company real time and real money, a change I believed in completely. And I knew the pushback was coming. So I walked in ready for a fight. Nobody had actually started yet. I justified every change before anyone questioned it. I backed each one with data, sourced and dated. I even softened the position itself. So the one person on that call who pushed back on almost everything I brought would have nothing left to hold on to. I had over prepared for objections that live mostly in my own head. The strategy passed. So on paper, it worked. But it cost me something that took me years to name. I had walked into that room having already decided that my own judgment needed a legal team before it was allowed to speak. Here's the part worth slowing down on. From the outside, self justification and diligence look identical. Both have data, both have preparation. You cannot tell them apart by watching. The difference is where the behavior starts. Diligence starts with the work. You dig in because the problem deserves it. Self justification starts somewhere else. It starts with a verdict, a decision you have already handed down on yourself about how the room is going to receive you before the room has said a single word. That is the tell. Preparation aimed at the problem is diligence. Preparation aimed at a reaction that has not happened yet is defense. There is a name for this behavior now: JADE. Justify, argue, defend, explain. And naming it feels like progress. It is not on its own, because the fix is not the discipline to stop doing four things on command. You can white knuckle your way through one meeting without over explaining, and the instinct will be right back the next morning. What actually breaks it is going back to the moment you decide your judgment needed a cosigner before it could stand on its own, and asking what you were protecting yourself from. Because your instinct was never the thing in question. Sit with that. The instinct was fine. What was in question in your own mind was whether that instinct would be accepted without a stack of evidence stapled to it. This did not come from a gap in how you communicate. You built it over years in rooms where your judgment got treated as hypothesis and someone else's identical judgment got treated as conclusion. You did not invent this pattern. You learned it. And you learned it because at some point it was accurate. If any of this is landing, the pattern has a longer history than one meeting. And I wrote a book about it. It is built around the exact signals you were trained to distrust, this one included. It is about leading from your own judgment, uncorrected, instead of stapling a data package to it before it is allowed to count. The first two chapters are free, and you can purchase the book on Amazon. Both items with links you can find down below in the description and on my profile. Now, let me take apart what the preparation is actually defending, because it's not the decision. The decision was already right. That is not where the exposure is. The exposure is the half second right after you speak. The moment the room could disagree, and you would have to stand inside that disagreement with no folder open, no citation to reach for, nothing between you and their reaction but your own judgment. That half second is what the case is building for. Being right was rarely the hard part. Standing in a room without proof in advance that you were right, that is the muscle. And it is the one that goes soft when you spend years never letting yourself test it. If you have ever asked yourself honestly why you explain decisions nobody challenged, insecurity is usually the wrong answer. What you actually did a long time ago was run a calculation. Somewhere back there, you ran a calculation. You worked out that the cost of being wrong out loud was higher for you than it was for the person sitting next to you. And you were probably right about that. So you built an entire operating system around never having to test that math again. Every extra slide, every pre answered objection is one more payment on a decision you made years ago about how much room you were allowed to be wrong in. I want to be careful here because this is where people hear the wrong thing. The thing to let go of was never your preparation. Real diligence stays, every bit of it. The rigor is an asset, and it always was. What loosens its grip is the belief underneath it. The belief that your judgment is a hypothesis until someone else co-signs it. You get to keep the competence. You just stop paying a tax on it that was never actually required. What changes is that you start to catch the exact moment preparation turns into defense against an objection nobody raised, and you stop right there. The target is not preparing less. It is catching that one moment. In practice, it is small. It looks like saying the recommendation first, plainly, before the supporting data. It looks like letting a silence sit in the room instead of filling it with one more citation. It looks like giving the room a chance to actually disagree before you have already answered every version of the disagreement in your own head. And sometimes the pushback still comes. That was never the variable that matters. What changes is not whether the room disagrees. What changes is whether you are still standing behind the decision after they do, without reaching for one more piece of paper to make the disagreement stop. Picture the version of a work week where that is true. You make a real call on Tuesday, and you do not spend the next 3 days relitigating your own tone. You say the thing you actually think, in the way you actually think it, and you let it land. The capacity you use to spend making your decisions acceptable before you said them out loud is just yours again. Welcome to SoulFIRE Leadership, where we talk about what leading at a senior level actually costs and what becomes possible when you stop paying the wrong price for it. If you made it this far, please like and subscribe. Over-explaining is a record of how much you spent making your own judgment acceptable before you ever let it speak. That is worth sitting with. Not fixing before your next call, just sitting with it. I'll see you next week.